is he can't take decision at the right time. When the decisions are needed to be taken. So his indecisiveness becomes his tragic flaw. When we think about Julius Caesar was assassinated by his friend, by his confident friend, Brutus. Brutus from backside assassinated Julius Caesar. And when Julius Caesar saw Brutus, he said, "You too, brute." He won't believe that Brutus is there to assassinate him. It was a very difficult scene for Julius Caesar. So, the tragic flaw of Julius Caesar is he trusted his friend and his enemy. And Brutus and Cassius and others find tragic flaw in the character of Julius Caesar is that he is having too much power. So let us conclude tragedy as a literary form, that is a very strong literary form, debatable in the terms of criticism. So tragedy is very different from comedy and very strong literary form. So tragedy is meant for a very emotional, very strong temperament in terms of action, in terms of place, in terms of characters, in terms of dialogues. So this is a little bit about tragedy as a literary form. Now let us go to poetry. Poetry as a literary form. There are two kinds of poetry: objective poetry and subjective poetry. Objective poetry is impersonal. Objects. When a poet sees things, observes things, notes something outside, he writes poetry. He writes a short poem. It is objective poetry, not personal, no personal feelings. When we think about subjective poetry is quite personal. It is the imagination of the poet. It is the imagination, thinking, personal thinking, personal feelings, personal imagination of the poet. So it is subjective. A very good example of Shakespeare's one poem on youth and age. And if we take the example of Shakespeare's poem, Shakespeare says that youth is agile, youth works hard, but age is calm, patient. Youth needs change. Age stick together. So this is here Shakespeare compares youth, youngsters, with age as old person, aged person. This is the example of objective poetry. Now when we say that, let us take the example of any elegy or any short lyric, any lyric. it is subjective poetry. What Robert Burns says, my love is like a red, red rose, newly sprung in June. This is quite personal feeling. If you take any example of Coleridge's poem, it is quite personal feeling. Any lyric of Shelley, Keats, very personal feeling. So this is subjective poetry. So objective poetry, subjective poetry. Objective poetry is quite dealing with observation, dealing with facts, objects, while subjective poetry is personal feelings. So this is the difference between objective poetry and subjective poetry. Now let us take the example of elegy. Elegy is a literary term. What is elegy? Elegy is a poem written on someone's death. There are many famous elegies in English. One is Milton's Lycidas. It is written on his friend Edward King. Another is Matthew Arnold's Thyrsis. Another is Shelley's Adonis. Shelley's Adonis is written on Keats, the great romantic poet John Keats. And Tennyson's In Memoriam, it is on Arthur Hallam. So why the subject death has been chosen to write a poem? Because death is the ultimate reality. When someone dies who is near to our heart, as a poet, how to express our feelings, how to pay tribute in words for that dead man. He is dead, but he was near to our heart. So poets have written elegies on the death of famous person. Here I will quote Shelley's beautiful lines on death of John Keats. It is very interesting, very touching how the best elegies are written. Nor let us weep that our delight to fled, envy and calumny and hate and pain, and that unrest which man miscall delight, can touch him not and torture not again. Last line, he lives, he wakes, it is death is dead, not he. Very, very classic line. It is death is dead, not my friend Keats, not he. He is shining like a star. A very personal feeling, very interesting line by Shelley on the death of Keats. So this is elegy as a literary term. Now we take epic as a literary term of poetry. Epic, we know it is a big poem in many books. In English, famous epics are Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Virgil's Aeneid, and Milton's Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. These are famous epics in English. If we think about our literature, our Indian literature, we can think about Ramayana and Mahabharata. and even Bhagavad Gita also. Ramayana is a great epic, great book. So all these epics are written in many volumes, generally 24 books. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, they have 24 volumes. Even Virgil's Aeneid is written in 24 volumes, 24 books. Milton's Paradise Lost is written in 12 books. So it's a very big difference between a short lyric and epic. A lyric has a single imagination, short imagination, limited subject, limited imagination, personal sort of feelings on one single episode. An epic has big imagination, many events, many war, many characters, grand characters, gods, goddesses, lords, supernatural elements. Big theme. 2, 3 or 4, 5 themes, 4, 5 plots on different aspect. Because 12 books or 24 books, it is a grand show of poetry. And in that poetry, tragedy is there, comedy is there, song is there, music is there, melody is there, everything is there. All sort of literary entertainment is there. As just now we see some Indian films have all sort of that we in sober days what we can say masala, all sorts of things are there. So in epic, all sorts of things are there. Epics have been written on big subject, big themes, and gods and goddesses, historical event, historical characters. So this is epics. When we think about Milton, Milton's Paradise Lost, we know the first mistake made by Adam. It's a story about Adam and Eve. First disobedience to God. Milton has written on a very, very great theme of God, first man Adam, and first man Eve. First woman Eve. Adam, Eve, and God. Heaven and this earth. So from heaven, Adam and Eve came to earth, and then the mankind started. That Paradise Lost, and his another epic, Paradise Regained. Now, after epic, let us think about mock epic. What is mock epic? There is a word, mockery or parody. Epic, some Italian writers and some British writers did the parody of epic. Actually, they have not written epic, but their small poetry or their small poem has the grand show of epic, and they have taken the place of mock epic. Pope Alexander Pope is a very famous poet of Britain. His The Rape of the Lock is a very beautiful poem. But the poem is not that short. The poem has a in the epic style, he has written the poem. grand show. The style of all characters of epic is there in his poetry. So Hazlitt gave comment on Pope's The Rape of the Lock, because the poem has a very small thing, very small theme. One baron, one character, he took the beautiful hair of one lady, Belinda, raped or taken the lock of the hair. Only this theme. On this theme, Pope has written a big poem, The Rape of the Lock. So Hazlitt has said, the little has been made great, the great little. But he has decorated his poem. Pope has decorated the poem, decorated the characters in epic style, and made a parody of epic. It's a rare example, and Pope has done this. Pope described the toilet of Belinda in a very Greek style, because Pope loved Homer. Pope loved Greek poetry. He has read Greek poetry a lot. So he succeeded in parodizing epic. So this is all about epic. When we are discussing epic, let us think about lyric also. What is lyric? Lyric is a very small, very subjective poem, personal poem. Some personal feelings of a poet. It's a very small poem, 10 lines, 14 lines. Sonnet is also near to lyric, but in the end of the sonnet, last 2 lines of the sonnet, it has something interesting, touching, or the end is with a good contrast. The feeling started in the beginning and the end of the poem is quite different. So some difference is there in the sonnet and lyric.